Miami's scandal. A rich girl's love for a beggar exposes her father's crimes. Under the scorching Miami noon, as a flood of traffic rushed through the intersection of Biscayne and Flagler, an old, ragged figure sat motionless beneath a royal poinciana tree, with a stooped back and skin weathered dark by the sun. The old man clutched a faded, army green surplus hat to his chest, as if it were the last shred of dignity he had left. No one knew his name or where he came from. People were just used to the sight of him sitting there for the better part of 3 years, accepting exactly 3 foil-wrapped breakfast burritos each day before silently vanishing as the sun went down. But amidst the indifferent crowd, one person paid him notice. Lily, just turned 18, was the favorite daughter of Mr. Sterling, a ruthless real estate mogul who held significant power in the coastal city. In complete contrast to the image of a young lady living a life of luxury, Lily had no interest in lavish parties or expensive designer brands. She found pleasure in the simple things: a cold soda from a corner store, a second-hand book, and the deep, sorrowful eyes of the old beggar on the street corner. It all began on a rainy afternoon 6 months earlier. While taking shelter from the downpour under an awning at Bayside Park, Lily happened to see the old man break his last breakfast burrito in half, setting a piece down for a skeletal stray cat. That silent, selfless act stirred something strange in the young girl's heart. From that day on, Lily began secretly bringing him breakfast, sneaking it out of the house behind her father's back. She never asked questions, simply placing the food down beside him and giving a small nod, each time. Without fail, the old man would nod in return, a slow and deliberate gesture, as if they were old acquaintances who had known each other for a very long time. The invisible thread connecting two people from completely opposite worlds was thus pulled tighter, until one fateful morning, when Lily accidentally saw her father, Mr. Sterling, standing across the street, staring at the old man with an expression that could not be put into words, a mixture of absolute horror and raw fear. That day, Lily had brought a special container of chicken and rice and a still warm bottle of rice milk. She huddled inside her jacket, trying not to be seen by any of the house staff who would surely snitch to her father. The familiar street corner came into view. The old man was still there, as silent as a statue. "I brought some extra sausage today. See if you like it." Lily smiled, setting the bag of food down. "Thank you, young lady," the old man replied, his voice raspy but warm. The old-fashioned way he addressed her as young lady always made Lily smile. But just as she had walked a short distance away, her father's gleaming black Mercedes came to an abrupt stop on the other side of the road. Mr. Sterling stood by the car, phone in hand, his eyes fixed in a stunned gaze on the royal poinciana tree. It wasn't the look one gives a stranger, but the look of someone confronting a ghost from their past. Mr. Sterling hastily turned, got back in his car, and sped off, completely unaware that his daughter had witnessed the entire scene. A huge question began to sprout in Lily's mind. What was the connection between her father and the old man? That evening, during a cold dinner in their lavish mansion, Lily decided to ask him directly. "Dad, do you know the beggar at Bayside Park? Under in the fines?" Mr. Sterling, who had been looking at his phone, froze for a second before quickly regaining his usual cold demeanor. "What nonsense are you talking about? Why would you associate with people like that? And making my times to be for it wasn't ways. It's just, he doesn't seem like an ordinary person." "I have a feeling you've met him before," Lily said, looking straight at her father, trying to read his expression. The chopsticks in Mr. Sterling's hand tightened until his knuckles turned white. "From now on, I absolutely forbid you from going to those places. Do you hear me?" he yelled, his voice suddenly changing, so harsh that even the maid in the kitchen flinched. "He's a con man. He's been involved in things so filthy you couldn't even imagine. And won't be intimidator." Never before had Lily seen her father lose his composure like that. His prohibition only made her more suspicious. That night, she snuck into his study. In an old cabinet drawer, she found a yellowed photo album. Tucked between the pages was a black and white photograph of 2 young men standing in front of a construction company named Reliance Construction. One of them was her father in his youth. The other was none other than the old beggar. Beneath the photo, a line of handwritten text had faded with the years. Mentor and student. 1996. The resin and rebested. Lily trembled. The ragged man her father had called a con man was actually his mentor. How could a mentor end up in such a state? And why would a successful student be so terrified of meeting his old teacher? The next morning, she went to the old street corner. The man was still there. Lily didn't offer him food like she usually did. She sat down, took out the photograph, and looked him straight in the eye. "Sir, the man in this picture, is this you? And the one next to you is my father. You stay to say the city in Rossavtation. And there he is lost talked, and lost and stays in the loam." The old man, whose name she now knew was Nolan from the inscription on the photo, stared silently at the picture. A long time passed before he looked up, his eyes no longer vacant but filled with an immense pain. "That is me. And the other is your father. Back then, he still called me his teacher. Quote abstinent. Mr. Nolan's answer struck Lily like a bolt of lightning. Although she had vaguely guessed it, hearing him confirm it with his own mouth still made her world spin. But why? Why did things turn out like this? One rel to envisions. Mr. Nolan was quiet for a long moment, then gave a faint, bitter smile. "Young lady, there are some stories where you can't understand the beginning just by looking at the end. Betrayal, greed, and wrong choices can sometimes make a person trade away their entire life." He looked at her, his gaze gentle but weary. "I won't say who was right or wrong. I will only tell a story. When you want to hear it, I will tell it. But remember, once the curtain of truth is pulled back, you can never pretend you haven't seen the rot on the stage behind it. There's stekly the safted joy than toddled, and the spected is later in the lected min brange." Lily clenched her fists. She knew she couldn't stop now. That afternoon, a downpour swept over Miami. Under the awning of an old bus stop, Mr. Nolan began to tell the story of his life. It happened over 20 years ago. Back then, your father, Sterling, was just a young man fresh out of college, trying to make his way in the city. At the time, I was the director of Reliance Construction. Sterling was recommended for an accounting job. He was smart, quick, and seemed so honest that I trusted him completely. Treated him like a little brother. Intin biz now bad. My watched freeways way. Lily sat in stunned silence. In her memory, her father had always been a self-made man who started with nothing, but he had never once mentioned a mentor named Nolan. The company was on the rise back then. Mr. Wad. Nolan continued, his voice steady. But then, out of nowhere, inspectors showed up. There had been an anonymous tip that the company was cooking the books. I didn't believe it. I checked the records myself and discovered that a large sum of money had been siphoned off through fake invoices. All trails led back to the accounting department. One ride on he one ride. And no have a graded very. Two has a rated rided for one rided very. Lily held her breath. I called Sterling in to ask him. He cried like a child, saying his supervisor had forced him to do it. That he would have been fired if he didn't comply. And he wouldn't have had money to send back to his sick mother. In that moment, my heart softened. I thought I could take the fall. Just to save his future. It is not mine as man's that. Then, while I was under investigation and the company's assets were frozen, Sterling quietly disappeared. I was in prison for 2.5 years. The day I got out, there wasn't a single soul waiting for me. Not a single word of thanks. He said the last sentence very softly, but each word was like a knife twisting in Lily's heart. She felt both shame for her father and a gut-wrenching pity for this man. Why didn't you seek justice? Why didn't you sue him? She asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Nolan smiled. Because I didn't want to live the rest of my life in hatred. And also because I believed that children like you would grow up and want to find the truth. It's a little o's of you ones. For the first time, Lily cried in front of him. That night, she snuck into her father's study again. In his safe, beneath stacks of project files, she found an old notebook. Inside were not numbers, but detailed notes outlining a plan to embezzle money from Reliance Construction, how to create fake invoices, and how to transfer the money through an intermediary account. And on the final page were the drafted signatures of her father. Next to the name Sterling. Everything was crystal clear. The father she had always admired might have once been a completely different person. The next morning, Lily returned to Mr. Nolan. This time, she didn't bring food. She brought photocopies of the notebook pages. "What is this?" she asked, holding the papers out to him. Mr. Nolan squinted at them, then nodded slowly. Their plan. So, he kept it after all. Their expedience at all one matter. "Then why did you sign the papers transferring the company to my father?" Lily asked. Her voice choked with emotion. "While I was in prison, Sterling came to visit. He said he would help me hold onto the company, to keep it from being fully seized by the state. He said he would temporarily put it in his name and give it back when I was released. I believed him. Young lady. That many President Sinins offens, many predative never." Tears streamed down Lily's face. She realized Mr. Nolan hadn't failed because he was foolish, but because he had been too kind and too trusting. As they were talking, a voice called out from behind them. "Lily, what are you doing here? Why are you sitting with this old guy? And mother Wayne disted do eyes, and the reed of the singly a prosid in the ferry." It was Kyle, the neighbor who had always been trying to win her affection. His eyes, fixed on Mr. Nolan, were filled with undisguised curiosity and contempt. "Stay out of this, Kyle. This is my business," Lily said, standing up to block his view of Mr. Nolan. Kyle didn't say anything more, just smirked enigmatically and turned to leave. But Lily didn't see that in that brief moment. He had raised his phone and snapped a picture of her sitting beside the ragged old beggar. A feeling of unease crept into her heart. From that day forward, an unsettling feeling followed Lily whenever she went to the familiar street corner. And soon, that feeling became a reality. One afternoon, as she was talking with Mr. Nolan, Kyle suddenly roared up on his scooter. "You're still hanging out with him? Are you crazy, Lily?" he snarled, his eyes burning with jealousy. Lily shot to her feet. "Kyle, you have no right to talk here. This is my business. And that is maken to steals of Emily. Your business. You're associating with an ex-con. Do you want the whole world to laugh in your family's face?" Kyle's voice grew louder, drawing the attention of people nearby. "You don't understand anything. He's not the person you think he is," Lily screamed, losing her composure in front of Kyle for the first time. He was taken aback, then let out a bitter, mocking laugh before turning his scooter and speeding away. The final look he threw at her held a dangerous, calculating glint. That night, Kyle posted the photos he had secretly taken to a private Miami community group on social media, along with a vague caption, "Daughter of a prestigious family and her strange sidewalk hobby." 3 days later, in the study of the White Mansion, Mr. Sterling received an anonymous envelope sent by a friend. Inside were printouts of Kyle's post. Mr. Sterling's hands clenched, trembling uncontrollably. His face went pale, his eyes glued to the image of his daughter sitting next to a disheveled, homeless old man. He understood that it was time to act before things spun completely out of his control. That day, Lily went to the familiar corner. But Mr. Nolan was nowhere to be seen. The stone bench was empty. She waited anxiously for over half an hour. But the familiar figure never appeared. As soon as she got home, her father summoned her to his study. Mr. Sterling sat behind his mahogany desk, his face as cold as stone. On the desk was the stack of photos of her and Mr. Nolan. "Do you have anything to explain?" "Into might not a cater and might not intinu not inten self." Lily was frozen. "I was just helping him. Besides, he used to be your mentor," she said, mustering all her courage to speak the truth. "Mentor." Mr. Sterling shot up from his chair, spitting out each word. "I have no such mentor. That man is a con artist. Do you have any idea that you are trampling on this family's honor?" This Nada did. Have her Haynes with class of the Bradmont. Tears fell from Lily's eyes. "I know everything. Dad. I saw your notebook. The sparely of the Freshens and had Brechteld and the Rebreclians. Her words were like a match to a fuse. Mr. Sterling lunged forward, slamming his hand on the desk. Shut your mouth. Everything you think you know is a lie that old man made up. It is not of live Dustin. If you did nothing wrong, then why were you so afraid that you forbade me from seeing him? Lily countered, her voice choked with tears. Mr. Sterling's face went pale, then hardened. He walked to the door and yelled, "From now on, you are forbidden from leaving this house. If you try to see him again, I swear I will make it so there isn't an inch of ground left for him to live on in this city." In the depted daughters they were silented unlain. The door slammed shut. Lily collapsed to the floor, sobbing. The thought that hurt her the most was the fear that her father had already driven Mr. Nolan away. 3 days passed, and there was still no sign of Mr. Nolan. Lily was a prisoner in her own home, her heart burning with anxiety. On the 4th night, she decided to escape. She quietly climbed over the balcony, crossed the garden, and hailed a rideshare, heading towards Little Havana, a place she vaguely remembered Mr. Nolan mentioning as a refuge for the city's poor laborers. A row of rundown motel rooms appeared under the dim, flickering streetlights. Damp and squalid, she stepped forward timidly and knocked lightly on the creaky wooden door of room number 3. The door opened a crack. Mr. Nolan stood there, looking much thinner and more haggard than before. Seeing her, his eyes widened in shock, then softened. "Young lady, how did you find this place?" "Repons from Armin's. And the skend. I guessed. Because you weren't at the old spot. But you also hadn't left Miami." She sobbed. The room was barely 100 square feet, empty except for a torn mat and a few old clothes. "It was my father who did this to you. Wasn't it? Bien insum stabs formosing. Believed to see castanet, an aptinus tan of the daledated." He only nodded slightly. Perhaps he thought I would disappear. Like a piece of trash. Very conned. Lily took his gnarled, calloused hands in hers. "No. You are not trash. You are the only person who has made me feel trust in this world full of lies. Dinmai arpolas nated from there in one dock." Mr. Nolan looked at her for a long time, his eyes both gentle and tormented. "Little one, you are a good girl. But you shouldn't waste your youth on an old man like me. Don't let yourself be dragged into this mud." She had dated him Brosen. "I don't care," Lily said, looking him straight in the eye, resolute. "I only know that your truth deserves to be respected, and I will stay here until you get that back." Till they were bright of rain the prize did, with thanks to the rounded from idation. As dawn approached, Lily still hadn't left. She sat leaning against the flimsy wall, lost in thought. "You said you were betrayed, but you only mentioned my father. Was there anyone else involved?" "Thisly in Small's way. They're not take it." Mr. Nolan was silent for a long moment. Then his voice dropped. "There was one other. A woman. He rarely mentioned women in his story. Her name was Kimberly Vance. She was my assistant at Reliance Construction. She wasn't just a secretary. She was the person I trusted most. Every important document, every contract, passed through her hands. If Sterling was the one who delivered the blow, Kimberly was the one who sharpened the blade. This nading one propersons." Lily was startled. "So where is she now?" "As Antanu Halmated den dot claver is round. After I was arrested, she vanished without a trace. But, Mr. Nolan's eyes narrowed. When the company was transferred into your father's name, Kimberly suddenly appeared on the list of shareholders, holding a 15% stake. No, they're not of their brucks. That means they were in on it together from the start," Lily exclaimed. "I have no proof, but I believe it's true." Mr. Nolan said, a bitter smile on his lips. He rummaged through his only possession, an old wooden box, and pulled out a crumpled business card. "Golden Dragon Realty. Kimberly Vance, CEO. It's a subsidiary of the Riverfront Properties Group, where your father is a major shareholder. As a pond from percent." Lily clutched the business card in her hand. Finally, a crucial link had appeared. The next day, she went to the headquarters of Golden Dragon Realty, a luxurious 7-story glass building. "I'd like to see CEO Kimberly Vance. Just tell her it's Lily." Mr. Sterling's daughter. Out of dance. A few minutes later, she was invited up to the CEO's office. Behind an ebony desk, a woman in her 50s with a sharp, cold face sat waiting. Her gaze was like a razor, capable of seeing right through a person. My dear, I always thought you'd take more after your mother. Kimberly Vance spoke first, her voice even but filled with power. Lily got straight to the point. I want to know what really happened to Mr. Tenchel Nolan all those years ago. It is not Markley in watching. Kimberly raised an eyebrow, then let out a soft laugh. You're too young to be digging for the truth. But you should remember. You are living in a castle built on the very foundation of Mr. Nolan's collapse. Don't be foolish enough to tear it down yourself. This anyone offensive class town. So you admit it. Lily's eyes narrowed. I admit one thing, Kimberly said, standing up and walking to the window. In the business world, kindness is a luxury. Mr. Nolan was a good man. But people like that can't run the game. These class pontated so late it are. Thank you. Now I know who was behind it all. Lily said. Shooting to her feet, Kimberly turned back, her eyes sharp and cold. You are Sterling's daughter. You carry his name. You should know which side you belong on. Know that way. Dale Davies for human Tinian. I don't choose a side. I choose the truth. Lily replied, her voice firm, before turning and walking out of the room. The moment the elevator doors closed, Kimberly immediately dialed a familiar number. Sterling. Your daughter just paid me a visit. How long are you going to keep up that moral charade? To ever blind all them? The call made it impossible for Mr. Sterling to sit still. That evening, he called Lily into his study. You went to see Kimberly Vance, he said. It wasn't a question. And she called you. Lily replied, without a trace of fear. How far are you going to take this? As American. Lily looked straight at her father. I just want to know if the man I've always called Dad truly climbed to where he is today by stepping on his own mentor. Ready. Mr. Sterling's fists clenched. After a long pause, he poured a glass of whiskey, took a small sip, and spoke, his voice weary. Life isn't as simple as you think. If I hadn't done what I did back then, this family and I would have had nothing. In life, sometimes you have to choose between being a good man and being a survivor. I chose the latter. Levitation. In the mating to market. For the first time, her father had admitted it, albeit indirectly. He had chosen safety for himself by pushing his teacher into the abyss. You used to teach me that good deeds are rewarded. But today, you tell me one must be ruthless to survive. So which one is the real you? Dad. Her eyes grew red. Mr. Sterling turned his face away. His voice choked. I'm not a good man anymore. Lily. I haven't been for a very long time. In 10 innovation. Some mighted was possible. Lily stood up. The tower of admiration she had built for her father over 18 years had just crumbled to dust. Then let me live out the decency we have left. I will fix what you did wrong, she said. Then turned and walked away, leaving the successful man sitting alone in the magnificent room. The next morning, a light rain drizzled over Miami. Pulling up the hood of her raincoat, Lily found her way to the familiar rundown motel. The cramped, poor room was the only place that held the truth she was trying to protect. The door opened. Mr. Nolan looked even thinner than he had a few days ago. My father, he admitted it. Lily said, her voice catching in her throat. Mr. Nolan wasn't surprised, only looking out silently at the white curtain of rain. I knew he would say that someday. I'm not angry. If I still held on to anger, I wouldn't have been able to live this long. My brain the droom did not for the Paula. You're not angry, but I can't accept it. Her eyes welled up. I can't stand seeing you live like this. A man who was a mentor, who built an entire enterprise, now has to sit in this leaky room. Strongs in life. Mr. Nolan smiled faintly. A smile that was both sad and warm. For me, being able to live in peace is more than enough. Sender. But what about your honor? Lily's question made Mr. Nolan freeze. His clouded eyes seemed to mist over. Honor. That's something I've always kept in my heart. But sometimes I wonder. If no one sees it, is it still real? In Stored Business's boardment, Lily placed her hand on his losted. Her gaze was resolute. Honor isn't for others to see. It's so you aren't ashamed of yourself. And I won't let you be ashamed. It is a brown afternoon to the compring that was him day. For the first time since the story began, Mr. Nolan nodded. A firm, decisive nod. So, what's your plan? And for Mr. Do. On next frame them. Lily took out a file. I'm going to bring this to light. I've contacted a lawyer. Attorney Miller. Do you remember him? Aizen Standher, for Eunice Standhers of the Takeottament. Mr. Nolan's eyes widened. His lips trembling. Miller. The young legal intern from my old company. Said as Cree's green friend tenure wide and wrong. And wide as have new in the rust aim to pin Delton Allage's proof frenure wrong wide and stain jises. Yes. He remembers you very clearly. And he said. If you're willing to come forward. He's ready to be a witness and help you sue over the fraudulent transfer of the company. In his benitation. In his wyand of light. Mr. Nolan's expression slowly changed. Not out of fear. But from being deeply moved. For so many years. He had lived like an invisible man. And now there was someone who believed in him and was willing to stand by his side. I will be with you. Every step of the way. Lily said. Like an oath. The following week. Lily, an 18-year-old girl, was sitting in a lawyer's office. Discussing legal strategy. Attorney Miller. Mr. Nolan's former colleague. Was a man in his 60s. Poised and experienced. When he saw Mr. Nolan again. The two men just shook hands in silence. But in their eyes was a world of memories and a trust that had never faded. Nolan. I won't promise anything. Attorney Miller said. His voice solid. But with what young Lily has gathered, we absolutely have grounds to file a lawsuit. Dennerton other helpans. Dennerton other helpans. It's not about getting the assets back. Mr. Nolan replied. I just need the truth to be exposed. Quote, to resaven under of the Darien under every self-mans. But it wasn't going to be easy. News of the lawsuit quickly reached Mr. Sterling. That afternoon. He stood blocking the mansion gate. His face a mask of ice. What do you think you're doing? Lily. I am tating the general unding that was side and next in anyone to. I'm doing what you should have done 20 years ago. She answered. Her gaze unwavering. You're destroying this family. The reputation I spent a lifetime building will be ruined. He yelled. A reputation built on lies deserves to collapse. Father. And hast of nother stagens. And how fine it is stains. Mr. Sterling was stunned. He lowered his voice. Almost pleading. Lily. I'm begging you. Please stop. I'll compensate him. Whatever amount of money he wants. And he pried and laid in a gruschen. They weighed in the lungded of laudest instas self on the craze. Lily looked straight at her father. Her eyes shining with utter disappointment. A man's integrity cannot be bought with money. Father. It's not a man's in his provision. In their native Rumen Tolden's a bride of played. She turned and walked away, leaving him to slump onto the stone bench. His head bowed. For the first time in his life, he felt afraid not of losing his fortune, but of losing the daughter he loved most in the world. That night, in the small motel room, Mr. Nolan read over the legal complaint. Beside him, Lily sat, as steadfast as a lighthouse in a storm. Are you scared? She asked softly. He nodded. Yes. But with you here, I feel a lot less scared. See no now see no. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But this time, the sound of it no longer felt so cold. Because on the thorny path ahead, they no longer had to walk alone. 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, tremors shot through Mr. Sterling's network of connections. That evening, in a private conference room at the Riverfront Properties Group, an emergency meeting was held, presided over by Kimberly Vance. If the story from 20 years ago is exposed, it won't just be Sterling who gets dragged down. The entire Riverfront Group will be implicated, she said. Her voice like ice. Everyone sitting here. Don't think for a second you're blameless. Janners is the central wrong. So, what are you suggesting? A bald man asked nervously. Kimberly smiled faintly. A smile as thin as a razor's edge. We don't need to use violence. We just need to attack their weak points. Mr. Nolan's poverty. And the girl Lily's affection for him. Make him feel like he's a burden. That he's destroying the girl's future. And he will back down on his own. And lacking the speaking. They were left together found of the medley. It happened exactly as she predicted. The next morning, a cardboard box appeared outside Mr. Nolan's motel room. Inside was $25,000 in cash, along with a scrap of paper. The price of silence. Your choice. Old man. Red of Lincoln of Lacher Amenders of the Larminian. Town you constrains of the Feldock. Mr. Nolan sat in stunned silence. He didn't sleep at all that night. When Lily arrived and saw him sitting motionless beside the stack of money, she understood everything immediately. What are you going to do? She asked. Mr. Nolan lowered his head, his voice full of anguish. Lily, I don't want you to be dragged into this filthy game anymore. If I withdraw the lawsuit, you can have your peace back. There what is now there. Cames to mated browded. Cames to mated browded. Lily sat down across from him, her voice gentle but firm. No. If you withdraw, the wicked win. And you will no longer be the man I respect. Or now. For the first time. Old tears rolled down his weathered face. Are you sure? It's not it's Anuana. Lily nodded decisively. I'm sure. Whoever uses money as a bribe is the one who knows they are guilty. In that moment, Mr. Nolan once again found the strength to continue. When the bribery scheme failed, they moved on to their second attack. An anonymous article was published on a sleazy gossip site with a shocking headline: Miami's Odd Couple, a rich girl's stunt, or a beggar's tragedy. The article used the photos Kyle had taken, implying that Lily was staging a relationship to get attention, and even cruelly suggested that Mr. Nolan was an actor hired to play the victim. This wide sand is now. Lily's hands trembled with rage as she read the article. Mr. Nolan only gave a faint smile. They're starting. Little one. Close now a content. Day dove row. Day Jamal ender planned. Day Jamal and Anaro. Attorney Miller shook his head. They want to attack your public image, to destroy any sympathy the public might have for you. Hey mache. Lily wasn't afraid of being misunderstood. She only felt pain at the thought of Mr. Nolan having to hear such venomous words. That night, she received an anonymous text message. This is your final warning. If you don't want to be smeared any further, drop the lawsuit. In Ostectons. She sat in silence for a long time. Then opened her social media page and typed a short but powerful status. Some truths are buried. I am here to dig them up. Anyone who is afraid, please step aside. Enders Armelinritis. The post immediately went viral. Meanwhile, in a small coffee shop in a rural town in northern Florida, a middle-aged man named Lampert was quietly reading Lily's post. He was the former chief accountant of a branch of Reliance Construction. It was he who, under pressure from Kimberly Vance, had been forced to alter the numbers. For 20 years, guilt and fear had sealed his lips. But today, the brave words of the young girl had awakened the sleeping conscience within him. He could not stay silent any longer. That afternoon, at Attorney Miller's office, a man with a weary look, dressed in a faded shirt, stepped timidly inside. Excuse me, is this the legal office representing Mr. Nolan? Jester was now and of the say. Mr. Nolan looked closely at the man, then froze. Is that you? Lampert. And the friend of the process was not by the teps. Mr. Lampert bowed his head. His voice choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. Mr. Nolan. Back then, I knew everything. I knew the books were altered intentionally. Ms. Vance was the one who gave the orders. And Mr. Sterling was the one who gave the final approval, but I didn't dare to speak up. Relation of the Bress. The entire room fell silent. Mr. Lampert's confession, 20 years late, was the irrefutable living proof they needed. Attorney Miller immediately turned on his recorder. For over an hour, Mr. Lampert recounted the entire truth. Speaking of the secret emails giving directives and the threats from Kimberly Vance. After the recording was done, Mr. Lampert stood up and clasped his hands. Looking at Mr. Nolan. I owe you an apology. If the court needs me to testify, I will. Rands of Procibbles. Mr. Nolan grasped his old colleague's hand without a single word of blame. That handshake lifted the burden of guilt that Mr. Innovant Lampert had carried for 2 decades. That night, Lily wrote another short line on her social media. The truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs brave people to speak it. Today, the first one has spoken. Intonation has Mary Fies into there. And Tivlox has in everything's they won by Wick. The appearance of Mr. Lampert was a seismic shock. The recording of his testimony, though not yet public, quickly spread through the legal community in Miami. On Kimberly Vance's desk, the phone rang incessantly. Old business partners, those who had benefited from the collapse of Reliance Construction, were now beginning to panic. Sterling, I told you. If we didn't extinguish it from the start, it would erupt into a tsunami. Kimberly roared over the phone. I was wrong, came the reply from the other end. Mr. Sterling's voice unusually subdued. He sat in his study, the lamplight carving even deeper lines into his face. In front of him was a photograph of Lily as a little girl. The girl with clear eyes who had once innocently asked him, Daddy, what makes a person good? Now, that same little girl was standing up against him to protect a good man who had been wronged. Meanwhile, Lily and Attorney Miller knew they had to act quickly to protect their witness. But they were one step too late. That evening, when Mr. Lampert returned to his motel room, he found the lock had been picked. The room was empty. All his papers, his computer, and the phone containing a copy of the recording were gone. On the table, only a scrap of paper remained with a scrawled message. If you know what's good for you, keep your mouth shut. Or else. It's Lesting from Must Frang. That night, Lily also received a call from an unknown number. If you want the old man to stay safe, you'd better know when to stop. 0 days. She gripped the phone tightly, her voice like ice. I am not stopping. And you should understand that the dark can never hide the light forever. There is in the restaurant. The very next morning, the break-in was reported to Attorney Miller. It wasn't a robbery. It was a declaration of war. They immediately moved Mr. Lampert to a secure location. That same day, Lily decided to launch her counteroffensive. She organized a small press conference, inviting only journalists from the most neutral and reputable newspapers. She wore a simple white blouse, her hair tied back neatly, standing before dozens of cameras and recorders. The 18-year-old girl's voice was poised and clear. I am here today not to defend myself, but to tell a part of the truth, a truth that has been buried for the past 20 years. Of this breast and marrow, she laid out the entire case, from Mr. Nolan's past and the suspicious evidence to Mr. Lampert's testimony and the threats they had just received. She didn't cry or complain. She used only facts and reason. We are not suing for money. We only want to restore the integrity of a man who has been forgotten by society. This called in Sladen Vizenteld. The atmosphere in the room shifted from curiosity to a quiet respect. A reporter stood up to ask, do you think the powerful forces behind this will leave you alone? Would tell United in the Con Miles. Lily looked directly into the camera. Her answer decisive. Perhaps. But if we remain silent forever out of fear, then evil is nurtured by our own submission. On rating in self and sen pace. That afternoon, the press conference created a seismic shock. Public opinion began to turn. People who had once mocked her were now commenting. This girl is anything but simple. If what she says is true, it's truly admirable. Dian tells on Riz never. Tell you never sive down. The Miami Legal Times ran a banner headline on its front page. A 2-decade-old cold case. The 18-year-old girl who chose not to be silent. The sayings that was known as ready one of their statings. The article spread with lightning speed. The case began to attract the attention of senior lawyers and social activists. The tide had truly turned. That evening, Mr. Sterling sat in his office, staring at the television screen replaying his daughter's speech. His eyes slowly reddened. It wasn't clear if from anger, shame, or from suddenly seeing a glimpse of the conscience he had lost so long ago. A week after the press conference, the city courthouse officially sent notice that it had accepted the lawsuit and scheduled a summons for all related parties. In the private conference room on the top floor of the Riverfront Properties building, Kimberly Vance was stretched to her breaking point. "We're out of time," she hissed. "Once the trial begins, everything will collapse. And the Murberful Askins pawn may be end. Jepson attended for Master Duix. So what do we do? Reno say to scene mineralation." Kimberly's eyes narrowed. Her voice merciless. "Eliminate the witness. The old man Nolan isn't a threat. But Lampert is too dangerous. Stage an accident. Nothing fatal. Just enough so he can't appear in court. Colander Strand. Their ex-divisionen of Damley too." That evening, Lily visited Mr. Lampert at the safe house, bringing him some hot food. "I'm not that strong," she told him. "I just don't want anyone to fall because of silence." They had no idea that in the darkness of a nearby alley, two strangers were already waiting, under orders to make their move the next morning. On the morning of the deposition, just before Mr. Lampert was about to leave, the building's security guard stopped him. "Mr. Lampert, there have been two strange men sitting in the parking lot since early this morning. Something doesn't feel right. Rest it is not lightings." Attorney Miller acted immediately. 10 minutes later, a team of private security guards was on site. They used a decoy car to draw the two stalkers away, while the real car carrying Mr. Lampert took a back route, circling around to the courthouse safely. At the courthouse, Mr. Lampert appeared, composed and strong. His testimony was recorded and sealed. Sitting in a nearby cafe, watching everything on a live feed sent from an acquaintance, Kimberly Vance's hands clenched, her teeth grinding. The plan had failed. On the official day of the trial, courtroom number 3 of the city courthouse was packed. Mr. Nolan sat with his back straight, Lily by his side. On the opposite side, Mr. Sterling looked haggard, while Kimberly Vance maintained her artificial, cold facade. After Attorney Miller presented all the evidence, Mr. Lampert was called to the witness stand. The entire room was silent. "I was the one who signed the altered ledgers under the direction of Ms. Kimberly Vance. Today, I can no longer remain silent. The person who lost everything in this affair was Mr. Nolan, the man who built that company from scratch, aided Justin Follum's to essence. But what no one expected was Mr. Sterling's next move. He slowly rose to his feet, his face no longer cold but marked with the surrender of a defeated man. "I have no defense," he said, looking first at Mr. Nolan, then turning to Lily, his voice full of bitterness. "That year, I chose the safest path for myself. I thought time would bury everything, but I was wrong." The entire courtroom was silent. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I only want to say I'm sorry to my mentor, and to my daughter, who has taught me what justice is. I makes two manner mine." All eyes turned to Lily. She didn't cry, she just quietly watched her father bow before the law for the first time in his life. The final verdict was announced. Mr. Nevertent Nolan is found innocent of all past allegations. The transfer of Reliance Construction shows signs of manipulation. This case is hereby forwarded to the Criminal Investigation Division to clarify the criminal liability of the involved parties. I am banding that. Comes with the said, dated. Comes with the gruesome. Mr. Nolan sat perfectly still, his eyes closed, his old, trembling hands resting on his knees as if he had just shed a burden he had carried for 20 years. Lily walked over and took his hand, whispering, "We've reached the end of the road, sir. Redden from Ansfrom. It's dented by Dale Tidmont with his nowins." Nearly a month after the trial, Mr. Nolan moved into a small house in the suburbs with a garden and afternoon sun. He didn't ask for his assets back. "The only thing I needed, I've gotten back. My good name," he told Lily. Lily was accepted into law school. After the journey she had been through, she understood that to protect the truth, courage alone was not enough. Mr. Sterling, after facing investigations, withdrew completely from the business world. People said he moved to a mountain town in Asheville to live a reclusive life. Once, Lily received an anonymous postcard from Asheville. Inside were only 2 words. "I'm sorry. Half did Vand." And refended. Kimberly Vance also vanished from the business world following the investigation. Her name slowly faded into obscurity. Which was, for her, the harshest sentence of all. A year later, Lily was invited to speak at a student forum. When asked what the biggest motivation was that kept her from giving up, she just smiled and answered softly, "Because I didn't want to grow up in a world where good people have to bow their heads." Cry generous. The entire hall erupted in applause. But in the very last row, Mr. Nolan just smiled quietly. In his eyes, she was no longer the little one from years ago, but a person who had walked through fire. And not only had she not been burned, but she had emerged more brilliant than ever. Thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So please leave a comment below. Your support means the world to us.